Okay, I want to start, as was Gila's suggestion, since we started this class, as we mentioned many times in the past, really to speak Rabbi Steinsaltz's words, learning from 13 Petalled Rows, and with the hope that by speaking his words, his speech will come back. It's almost as if we're creating that energy in the world in which his words are being recited. So words, the source of those words should start functioning again after the stroke that he had over 2 years ago. So with that in mind, I just want to start off with a special psalm, Tehillim, in dedicated to Rabbi Steinsaltz's full and speedy recovery. The recovery will have his full name in mind, Harav Adin ben Rivka Leah, Rabbi Adin, the son of Rivka Leah. And I want to choose the Tehillim again that is a Tehillim that apparently came up in the discussion between the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rabbi Steinsaltz. A spontaneous discussion at the head of the footsteps of 770, the headquarters of the Chabad movement, in 1986, I believe it was. Rabbi Steinsaltz was walking there on the street, and the Rebbe saw him, and he called him, and they had a discussion. No one really knows what they spoke about, but they did speak about this psalm, a psalm that speaks also of the power of speech. So I'm dedicated specifically this psalm that speaks again of the power of speech, and with the hopes that the words of this psalm will indeed bring back the speech to Rabbi Steinsaltz that he hasn't had since his stroke. So here we are. Okay, back to Rabbi Steinsaltz's words. So we were reaching the end of chapter 4, which is the chapter on holiness. And just to recap very quickly before we delve right back into it. So Rabbi Steinsaltz says, of course, shares the Kabbalistic idea that holiness is designed by God. We can't decide that something is holy. Only God can decide that something is holy. Why is that so? Because God is the source of holiness. So God can decide on what and on whom to bestow holiness. We can't do that. That's one of the main differences between the Jewish religion and the Christian religion, for example. They can say he's holy. We have no right to say who's holy. God decides who's holy and who's not. Now, in general, there are three different types of holiness, or three sections of holiness that were, again, designated by God. One realm of holiness is the realm of the world. There are places in the world that are holy. Jerusalem, for example, is designated as the holy city, so it's holy. There's 4 holy cities in Israel. Jerusalem is the holiest of all because of the temple. God also decided that the temple will be holy, so it's holy. Now, Jerusalem is also known in Kabbalah, as Rabbi Steinsaltz explained, as the epicenter of holiness, the navel of holiness. That's right, in which all of the holiness of the world flows through. And that's why they say that when we pray, that's why we face east when we pray, but all the prayers of the world go to Jerusalem first, and then from Jerusalem, they go up to the heavens. They don't go from here straight to the heavens. Unfortunately, I have to go straight to Jerusalem. That's why I think the Western Wall is a place in which you feel that holiness, because that's the closest to the heavens, so to speak. Or even the place behind. We have the picture right here. Behind the Western Wall is even holier than that, no matter what they attempt to do there. But that's one realm. The other realm of holiness is the realm of time. God decided that Shabbat is holy, and therefore it's a holy day. He decided that the holidays are holy, and therefore they're holy. We can't say, well, I want Tuesday to be holy. I'm sorry, we don't have that power. God chose Shabbat as the holy day, so that's the holy day. And it's found also in different, not just in designated calendar times like Shabbat and holidays, but it's also found in a more detailed way that there are segments of holiness in each and every day, or segments of God's blessings, holy blessings in each and every day. And that's why he also spoke a little bit about this. Let me shut this off completely. But that's why the Talmud says that if you were born on a Sunday, then that connects to a specific blessing, holy blessing, based on what God infused on that Sunday. So if you're born on Sunday, you're either extremely good or extremely bad. Why? Because that's when, on the first day of creation, that's when God created darkness and light. So you're either extremely good or extremely bad. On a Monday, God separated the waters. So if you're born on a Monday, you have a tendency to be angry. that you feel that conflict. If you're born on a Tuesday, you'll be either wealthy or promiscuous. Why? Because God created plantation there and the world that sprouts. So on and so forth. So you have grains of holiness, so to speak, that were planted by God in each and every day. It's not just the entire day of Shabbat, for example, but also there's grains of holiness in each segment of the day. So that's that. That's that realm. The third realm is the realm that he speaks about at the very end now of this chapter. It's the realm of human beings. If God designates that a person is holy, then he's holy. So God designated Moses as the leader of the Jewish people. So he became holy by God's designation. Prophets carry God's words. So they also become holy by being that channel of God's words in the world. Now, that's one aspect of human holiness. The other aspect of human holiness is by actions that we do. Actions that we do, mitzvahs that we do, can make us holy, at least during the moment of the mitzvah. So if you're engaged in the mitzvah right now, a mitzvah also means to connect. The word mitzvah does not just mean command, but it comes from the word tzavta, or in Hebrew tzevet, which means to join. When you're doing a mitzvah, you're joining God, you're joining the source of holiness. So the action of the mitzvah itself, that engagement, makes you holy, at least for that moment. If you're in a constant state of mitzvah, then you can be constantly holy, and that's why we consider holy great sages and saints or scholars, holy people. Many come to mind, but because they're in a constant state of holiness, they're always joining God. It's not about them. It's never about them. It's about what God wants me to do right now. And they're always living in that mode. And therefore, God flows through them all the time. And that is what makes them holy. So, God also designated that realm as holy, again, based on his prerequisites. Now, we were speaking about also the cycle of the moon and the sun last week. We spoke about how we follow the lunar calendar, even though we adjust it every 2 to 3 years. Okay. Because the lunar calendar really represents this idea that we only reflect God. We're a reflection of holiness. That's the Jewish purpose. Like the moon reflects the light of the sun. But okay, so let's continue at the bottom of page 58. It is in this way. Does anyone want to read?
Of this revelation.
Right. So it's a beautiful thought. I mean, I wish we would celebrate holidays like that. But holidays are not just there to remind us. We don't just celebrate Passover or the Passover Seder to remind us that once upon a time our ancestors were slaves in Egypt. But they are there also because they themselves are holy. The day itself is holy. So it's a holy day that and you almost can't ignore. So you're not just celebrating the past, you're celebrating actually the present holiness that's inherent in the holiday itself. There's a new light, so to speak, that comes each and every holiday. Even on Rosh Hashanah, God says that, Tanya speaks about this a lot, about the day of Rosh Hashanah, that there's a new light each and every Rosh Hashanah that is drawn down to this world that has never been here before. So Rosh Hashanah is not just about a day of crowning God as the king, but it's really a day of connecting to this new light, to this new holiness. Fine. Why? Because God designated it. In fact, in Hebrew, what's the word for festivals? We call them mo'adim. Mo'ed. The word for mo'ed in Hebrew also means designated. Meyu'ad. That's the modern Hebrew word. Or yi'ud is another word that would be used. It means designated. In other words, a festival is not just a festival, but it's a designated time of holiness by God. So when we celebrate holidays, we actually celebrate that designated new holiness right now. It's a good question. It's a good question. Nachmanides asked that question, and he answers what you just said, that we were much closer to God back then because there were less impurities in the world. And with the generations, we add more and more layers of those obscure layers of those impurities that almost block this divinity or this revelation of divinity where we can't really sense it. So that's Nachmanides' answer. So now we're celebrating Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a rabbinic holiday, but let's say, I think rabbinic holidays also fit in the same picture, but to use a more biblical holiday, Passover. So when Passover will come about, those days of Passover, whenever they fall this year, I think in April, maybe in March or whenever, but those days of Passover are just as holy as the days of Passover celebrated 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. And that holiness is what we have to connect to. Not just the memory of Passover, but it's the holy days. Imagine you were encountering a holy person. So that holy person is called Passover. That's who's coming into your house. You're not just, really, that's the guest. There's a beautiful story. I know you have a question, but the story that comes to mind to illustrate this point. There's a story from the Midrash about a person who would live in seclusion, and all he would do all day long is learn the tractate of Chagiga. Chagiga is a tractate in the Talmud, and he would learn it day in and day out, and learn again and again and again. One day he died, and no one was there to bury him. And all of a sudden, this woman comes from the neighborhood and says to the neighbors of this man that died, "Hey, you have to bury this man. Though he didn't connect with anybody, but you have to bury this man." And she organized the funeral, and then she organized for people to sit Shiva. And she came and to the Shiva, and at one point I asked her, "Who are you? We never saw you before. Who are you?" And
Unknown caller.
she said, "That's fine, no problem." She said, "Who am I? My name is Chagiga." The next day she disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And then they understood it was the book of the Talmud itself, Chagiga, that came because he was so connected to her. She then was connected to him at the moment he needed her the most. So you have books that come alive, holiness. You have days that come alive. So you have day of the person of Passover coming into your house. That's the way we should be viewing it. Right.
Which happens all the time.
Right. No doubt. I mean, especially like we said on Rosh Hashanah, there's a new light coming to the world. So that newness changes, adds another layer. It comes in different, with different variation. But I will say we feel it also, it amazes me. I may have spoken about this before, but amazes me, especially in Israel. I don't know if you feel that same feeling too, but on Saturday night, people work on Sundays, by the way, in Israel, right? So the night to go out in Israel is really Thursday night, because Friday, most people, governmental offices are closed. Most people don't work on Friday. That's the night to go out, on Thursday night. But really, people go out massively on Saturday nights in Israel. The streets are packed. I remember growing up there. But you're working the next day. But still, people have this urge to go out. And my theory, and I could be completely wrong, is because on Shabbat we feel this holiness, we connect to it, and then it leaves. So all of a sudden we're left with the sense of emptiness. So we try to fill it up by going out and by doing whatever we can do to fill this void. But again, it's because this holiness came in. It came into our lives. So it's not just Shabbat to rest, and that's all nice, but there's something in the air. There's a realm of holiness that we have to connect to also, and that's true on holidays too. Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's something that we have to become in tune to, but no doubt, I mean, you have a guest at home that's completely holy, and we're talking about history and whatever. Let's relate to the holiness too. That's the reason also we make room for that guest in our prayers. So, for example, the supplication part of our prayer, the tachanun part of our prayer, not recited on the holidays. Why? Because there's a guest in the room. It's holy. You have to give him respect. You're not going to start crying in front of him. He doesn't like that. He wants you to relate to him. So that holiness is there. So it makes room for all sorts of holy things that we do in respect of the holiness that really exists. We don't always feel it. There's a famous statement by the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov quoted once to his students the Talmudic phrase that says that every single day a voice comes out of Mount Sinai and cries and says, "Oi, oi." That's where the oi, the Yiddish oi, comes from. But it's a statement in Talmud. Oi, lashchina. It's like oi to the divine presence, that it was forced to be exiled with God's children. And one of the students asked the Baal Shem Tov, "So how come we can't hear it? That's what the Talmud says. How come we can't hear it?" The Baal Shem Tov says, "Well, we can't hear it, not because the voice doesn't exist, but because you become deaf. But it still goes out every single day." So it's same year. The holiness is there during the holidays. Those voices are there in a way, but we're deaf sometimes. Can't hear, but they still exist. The Baal Shem Tov could hear it. And that's what we have to become in tune to. That's right. No, absolutely. Good point. Excellent point. The Enosh the fast days, and even I would say like less celebrated, like Tu B'Shvat. Every day with a theme has a guest in the room, and you have to give it its proper respect. I think in a way, so you speak of inauspicious days. I think your sites are like that. Your sites are days.
That would be more personal.
Yeah, more personal days that either have come or yet to come. But there'll be happier days, no doubt. Look, Hanukkah until 164 BCE didn't exist, and so it was with Purim and other holidays. That's an excellent question. So did Hanukkah exist before 164 BC, before the miracle of Hanukkah, or not? That's a good question. And you could say mystically, and that would be Nachmanides going back. That would be his approach. That yes, everything was created before creation. Everything that was going to happen was already the map was there. The map then is executed by us living it, right? But Hanukkah was there beforehand. So the 25th of Kislev was already designated from the beginning of times as Hanukkah. Then we revealed it when the miracle happened. But it's interesting because I'll tell you this, there's what's called, and that's the reason I just want to delve into this a little bit. It might deviate, but it's important to understand this. There's a statement that says this, and we find that in many other areas. Statement in the Talmud that says, "Kol ma shetalmid vatik atit lechadesh nitan leMoshe miSinai." That any chiddush, in other words, any new idea that a student will share in the future has already been given to God on Mount Sinai, to Moses on Mount Sinai by God. So in other words, it's really nothing new. You might have the greatest invention, the greatest innovation. Well, it's not an innovation. It was already, Moses knew about it already. Now, what does that mean? That relates to exactly what we're speaking about. And by the way, we find this in prayer. The question is asked, if God decides, maybe we spoke about this, but if God decides everything on Rosh Hashanah, decides everything for us in Rosh Hashanah. That's why we pray on Rosh Hashanah. Give us a good year, give us a prosperous year, give us a healthy year. So God will decide on Rosh Hashanah what type of year we'll have, who will die, who will live. Right? We say that in the Tali Toke. The Talmud even says God decides exactly to the cent how much money you'll make. It will decide. God decides exactly how many words you'll say, you'll utter that year. That's why if you feel you've spoken too much, maybe you should slow down a little, because by August you won't have any words left. But that's what God goes to the very last detail. But God decided everything on Rosh Hashanah. Then why pray? Why pray 3 times a day? God already decided. God is not going to add to your bank account. He already decided how much how that's going to look like. So the answer that's found in Kabbalistic books is that it's true, God decided everything, but he put everything in potential. Now you have to draw the potential down. That's what prayer does. You're drawing that light down. It's like having a bank account. You can have a bank account with $1 million, but if you don't go to the ATM and draw it down, you'll be penniless. Prayer is going to the ATM. It's drawing down that potential. So Hanukkah existed in potential by actually fighting the Greeks, winning the Greeks, right, achieving victory. The Maccabees were achieving that victory. It drew down the light of Hanukkah that was already at the foundation of that day. Same with prayer. Same with that idea, the innovation that the student has in 2018 today was given 3,300 years ago on Mount Sinai, but only the light of it was given. Now he draws down. Now he almost articulates it. Puts it into words, puts it maybe into actions, or publicizes it to the world. There's a story about Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the foremost Kabbalist of Tzfat, that he was once approached. And I apologize I don't know if I shared the story or not, but it's a good illustration of this point. But Rabbi Yitzchak Luria was once approached by Rabbi Yosef Karo, who's the author of the Code of Jewish Law. They lived in Tzfat together. Rabbi Yosef Karo came into his room very depressed. And he told Rabbi Luria, I'm very upset. Maybe you can explain this to me. I've been working on this halachic problem for many months. I have many questions, and I couldn't figure it out. And finally, after many months, a few days ago, I reached a solution. Then I went out to the street to catch a breath of fresh air. Let's share the story with you, maybe, possibly. It's good to hear, okay. And these two students who were youngsters, right, were speaking about the same exact halakhic problem I was working on for 3 months, and the one of the students just shared the answer just like this. And it came so naturally. And I'm supposed to be the scholar, and this guy's nothing, and he knew it. So can you explain this to me? Rabbi Luria says, yes, of course. What you did during those 3 months is that you drew down the light to the world, the answer to the world. Once you drew it down, now any little student can access this light. And in a way, that's what we do through prayer. That's what we do through the military victories or whatever it may be. We draw down the light that already existed. Draw it or not to draw it, to go to the ATM or to not go to it. Yeah, there's different degrees, no doubt, but nonetheless, the holiness is still there. So you're right, the holiness of Hanukkah is less intense than the holiness of Passover, because one is a rabbinic holiday, one is a biblical holiday. But I'll tell you, you know what, just to go into this, but Hanukkah's coming up, so we can speak a little bit about Hanukkah. You know what the holiest night of Hanukkah is? This was, speaking of a later student bringing a revelation to the world. No, you would think the Shabbat. This is the revelation of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, blessed memory. He says the holiest night of Hanukkah, it's a beautiful thought, is the 5th night. That's why you should give extra money to your children on the 5th night, Hanukkah Geld. Why is it the 5th night? So he says because the 5th night, just the way the calendar is constructed, the 5th night can never fall on a Shabbat. Which means really that the 5th night is the darkest night. But that also means that the light of the 5th night must be the brightest light, because it can light a night that can never fall on a Shabbat. It can light that type of darkness, that depth of darkness. So the 5th light is really the brightest light, and it's the most special night. It reminds me of the prayer of the high priest on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies. He would ask that no pregnant woman should miscarry. But what he really was saying is that we don't miscarry also all of those pregnant dreams, pregnant blessings, pregnant holiness that every day carries. And like you said, every day, I'm going back to what we said before, Monday has a special pregnancy, and Tuesday is a different type of pregnancy. That's right. You see, you just gave birth also to this idea. That's excellent. But I will go as far as saying that not only every day is pregnant with blessings, but I would say every moment is pregnant with blessings. I personally think, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is the way I would define holy people, is that holy people are so devoted to the godly mission, such committed emissaries of God in the world, such channels, that they are able to really give birth to those blessings at every moment. They're holy 24/7. So they never say, well, I need a break. They never say, yes, someone needs me, I'm not going to go now. And that's not their, modus operandi. They don't operate like that. They operate by saying, well, God needs me now. And I'm going to make sure to give birth to this pregnant moment. And He'll need me even when I'm tired at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll do it then also. I think that's the definition of holy people. I see that certainly in Rabbi Steinsaltz, the author of this book. He works 24/7, but he's never thinking of himself. Really, never. It's always about, okay, I have something to do. So I do it. And he's as driven as could be. I think Lubavitcher Rebbe was like, Lubavitcher Rebbe never took a day of vacation. Forget about a day. Never took an hour of vacation. For him, every moment counted. He was the most disciplined man. Every minute counted. Because he knew that every moment is pregnant with blessings. Love that expression. But even to the point that you might say, well, that's a little robotic. But Of course, he was married. He didn't have children, Lubavitcher Rebbe, but every day he would have tea with his wife. I think it was at 4 p.m. every single day. He stuck to that hour. He would be precise. 4 p.m. he was there, and he would sit with his wife, completely present, for 20 minutes, from 4 to 4:20. If he would come 1 minute late, he would call his wife saying, "I'm coming 1 minute late today." And at 4:20, he would get up and continue on with his work. Now, I'm sure sometimes it spilled over, to 25 minutes, to who knows how long. But he knew that these are 20 minutes which I have to give birth to my relationship with my wife every single day. Yes, I mean, there's a beautiful Talmudic statement. I hope my memory doesn't fail me, but that says that the day is divided into 4, and God divides his day into 4. The first part of the day, he studies Torah, if I'm not mistaken. The second part of the day, he judges the world. The third part of the day, he nurtures the world, mefarneset ha'olam, gives people their livelihood. And the fourth part of the day, he plays with the fish, the Leviathan. That's what the Talmud says. Then he would go back, and then he wouldn't come home till sometimes 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, because what he would do then, he would go, of course, he would go back. I think then he would study, but then at 8 o'clock every night there would be private audiences until the 80s, and then he stopped that because it was too much, and then he switched to the dollars on Sundays, giving out dollars for 8-9 hours. But from 8 o'clock at night, sometimes it was just to 3 in the morning, and sometimes it was till 7 o'clock in the morning, depending on how long.
Not on Shabbos, right?
On Shabbat, not on Friday night, yeah. And what's interesting is that also, as disciplined as he was, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you would think, that's what I'm saying, it might sound robotic, but as disciplined as he was as attentive as possible to, I would say that I'm sure, it's like that by rabbis, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it was amplified many times more. A lot of his job is not what he planned, it's what jumped on him, right? So you got phone calls and letters from all around the world, so he had to be as attentive as possible. So imagine trying to stick to a schedule as this in the most disciplined way, but on the other hand also be as flexible as possible to accommodate all of these things that jump on you. And he was able to do that in the most beautiful way. By the way, he never spoke about himself. The Lubavitcher Rebbe never ever spoke about himself, but very rarely. This idea that they were able to be so in tune with the moment, the pregnancy of the moment, that they knew that, okay, it's not about me. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I just was going to say that at least 1,000 letters towards the end of his life, certainly 1,000 letters per day by people, and it never seemed to bother him. Never seemed to bother him. He had time and the ability to attend to every one of them. That's just amazing. But again, that goes back to his ability to be that channel. Rabbi Steinsaltz says that when the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I've heard him say that many times, but when the Lubavitcher Rebbe became the Rebbe, he said to himself, from now on, I'll cease to exist. It's not about me. I'm just God's channel in this world. Anyhow, so holy people, again, speaking of holiness, holy people are the people who can connect to the holiness of every time, of every moment, and give birth to that, to those every moments. Okay, let's continue a little bit more. Page 59. Right. So going back to the analogy, if you have a person in the room that's holy each and every holiday, that person wears different hats each time. So imagine you have a doctor in the room coming, and then the next guest is a lawyer. Each one brings his own gift. The doctor comes to heal you. The lawyer comes to advise you, maybe. The whatever, then you can go on and on. But same year, every holiday has its own purpose. So on Rosh Hashanah, God comes to bless us with the new year. And that's why our prayers are in tune with that message. The holiness of each holiday is different. There's the general holiness of holidays, but there's also the particular holiness of each and every day. I think that, by the way, the names of each holidays, and that's why we have to be so cognizant of those names. The names of holidays are almost the names of that person, right? To use that analogy, that holy person. The name can tell you exactly what it's about. Rosh Hashanah is called Rosh Hashanah. It's the head of the year, not the beginning of the year, but the head of the year, because it acts like a head. This is, the head is the function of the entire body. You want the head to be healthy, and those prayers are about the head. So you want to connect to that blessing that this holiness brings, and so on and so forth. I want to pay attention here also closely to the words that he said. This is made possible by divine forgiveness on Yom Kippur, of course, by the divine forgiveness and pardoning of sins. Then this part of the sentence, which overcome the downward pull of forces resulting from transgressions and shameful thoughts. Again, I think 13 Petal Rose is one of Rabbi Steinsaltz's books where he's very particular with every word. But the downward pull, I want to focus here on these words. The downward pull of forces, resulting from transgression, but downward pull of forces. So, of course, I think it's connected to the statement in Talmud that God made the human being upright, unlike animals that are forced to look downward. And that's because really God gives us the choice each and every day to either look upwards or to look downwards. If we follow our godly soul, we'll be looking heavenward. If we follow our animalistic soul, then we'll be looking downward. And, it's interesting, it's actually in this week's portion, but God promises Abraham that that his descendants will be as many, either as the stars of the heavens or as the dust of the earth. Almost alluding to the same idea, that it's up to you. You have that free choice. You can go up to the stars or you can go up to the dust. What will make you go to the dust? That's transgression and shameful thoughts. What will make you go to the heavens, to the stars of the heavens, is your ability to adhere to God and His blessings and His holiness. It's an interesting expression, downward pull of forces. So there are evil forces, but the evil forces, unlike what Christians may think, are not independent forces. Why? Because everything comes from God. God is the creator of everything, even evil. But the Tanya actually speaks a lot about this. The Tanya says that these evil forces are nurtured as a person would nurture his enemy or someone that he's forced to nurture. How would you do that? You wouldn't give him his food like this. You would throw it behind your back. Like God saying, you know what, I have to do this, so yeah, take them. They have to be nurtured by God because God is the source of all creation, otherwise they would cease to exist. So they have to cling to God in a way. So these evil forces try actually to cling to anything holy to exist. And that's why you'll also find it's almost like mosquitoes. Mosquitoes need your blood to exist. So they'll try to cling to you, and the bigger you are or the more blood you have, the more mosquitoes will be attracted to you. And that's why you have the greater the holiness, the more forces will try and cling to that because they know that they can't exist without them. So they'll cling to holiness to suck as much blood out of it. But of course they have to follow their purpose, to fight holiness. They need holiness, but they don't need holiness. But on the other hand, they affect people. That's what they exist. That's why they exist. The Zohar speaks of this parable, maybe that portrays this well, but the Zohar says it's almost like a king who had a single child, a prince, and he wanted to make sure that this prince is capable of succeeding him, becoming the next king. So he wanted to test his character. So what did he do? He sent a prostitute to tempt him. Now the problem was that the prostitute she said to herself, well, if I fail in my mission, I wasn't a good prostitute. So the king is not going to like me. If I succeed in my mission, the king also is not going to like me because his son failed because of me. So the evil force is in a catch-22 situation also. On the one hand, it needs to go attack the human being to try and make him fail. And then you want to do it doesn't want to do it too well because then it will upset the king, it will upset God. So in a way, that's why the evil forces need us. They need that holiness, and they try and attack it. On the other hand, we also have to bear in mind that they really don't want to. So we have the upper hand. When to these evil forces, absolutely. That's why the Kotzker Rebbe actually uses that example to explain something. But one of the prominent prayers of Yom Kippur is the Al Chet prayer, where We say, God, sorry for this, sorry for that, sorry for this. One of the praises, Al-Chet, sorry God, for using the Yetzer Hara, for using the evil inclination. Al-Chet shechatanu b'Yetzer Hara. What does this mean? That you use the evil inclination, you have the evil inclination. What does it mean? So what we say is that, yes, the evil inclination wants to cause us the evil, but it really doesn't. We used him so well that we convinced him that that's what he should do. That's what the Kotzker Rebbe says. But really, we have to bear in mind that, we have the upper hand here in this fight, and that we shouldn't use the Yetzer Hara to transform him into real evil, because essentially that's not what he wants to be. But anyhow, so that's relating to the evil forces in the world. I will say this, that I think that's why Jerusalem is such a contested city. There's so much holiness there, there's so many evil forces wanting to attack it. I think the most contested cities in Israel are the holy cities. Hebron, very contested city also because of that. It's true in cities, it's true in places, it's true in human beings. Albert Einstein said that great minds will, not quoting word for word, but great minds will almost always be violently opposed by mediocre minds. When you have something great, you'll always have opposition to it. There's evil forces. But those holy forces should not be intimidated by it again, because they're just there to oppose you because they need you. But they really don't want to attack you. They're nurtured by the holiness. They need the holiness to exist, but they really don't want to be that man. No doubt. Mitzvahs are considered the shield. We talk about shields in the prayer, Magen Avraham or Magen David, the shield of David, shield of Abraham. And the Talmud unabashedly says that these are the mitzvot that they performed. Created a shield. They protect you. And the Torah, no doubt, also is an inherent or more an internal protection. There's a verse in Psalm 19, that says that Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Lev, Torat Hashem Temima Meshivat Nafesh, which means that the Torah of God is complete and it restores the soul. And it also says that the commandments of God bring joy to the heart, rejoice the heart. So in a way, when you engage in them, then you create a shield of joy, a shield of, soul restoration of peace of mind, so to speak. And that's a good mosquito repellent. All right. Okay, no, thank you so much. Thank you. 2 weeks. Yes, October 31st. All right. Okay, have a beautiful day, everyone. We'll see you. Thank you.